And we're just about done with this side of Craig's chef's knife. So we're going to switch over to this one, and then we're going to get off of this 36 and get it up pretty much even with the fillet knife. And then we'll come back when we have these in the rotary vise and we're doing some hand sanding. I will show shots of tapering the tang on the fillet knife before we actually move to the rotary vise. Alright, just wanted to give you some shots of the tang grind, and I don't know if you can see that, but I can just barely see the edge of my layout line. Now the point I'm interested in is right there, and I wear one of these while I do this so I can see that scribe line just start to get affected. So when I get it to that point, I'm going to flip over to the other side because I want the point of this handle area. That's the only part I really want down to that layout line. This is going to get a little thicker because it's further up the taper, and I'm just starting to kind of affect my bluing, and my scribe line is right here. I don't know if you can see that, but I'm going to switch to an 80 grit belt to creep up and finally affect that last little area. So the key to this is, one, it's a light touch. If you notice, I'm kind of fingertipping this thing. I'm not gripping this thing real tight. You just want to take your time, get a nice straight taper on your tang so your handle scale will lay flat, and use a sharp belt. Grinding belts are consumable items, and some of them are, well, they're a little pricey when you compare them with, cheap belts. But if I get 3 knives out of a ceramic, and then I have to relegate it to doing things like handles and other kinds of grinding in the shop, and that's fine with me. It's a good return on the investment. I don't buy the top of the line belts, but I buy some pretty nice ones. I get them from True Grit, and they have a good price on them. So anyway, it's just a light touch at this point. We're not reducing the thickness by very much, so you have to be careful not to over grind and come into here, and then you've got a problem. So anyway, I wanted to show you the tang grind to that point, and I'm going to go ahead and get the camera out of this little gritty environment and get this thing finished up. And I've got this knife. I just threw it in the dunk tank. I've got it ready to go up to an 80 grit now and get caught up to this knife, which is not at 320 yet, but it's going to be. But I'll come back when these knives are over in the rotary vise and they're getting hand sanded. Alright, I moved over here to the rotary vise and I finished the tang, both sides of it, up to an 80 grit, and that's about as fine as I'm going to take it, because it's going to get scored with the diamond file to get the epoxy to stick. But before I start hand sanding this in earnest, what I do is, as you see, I've blackened this with Sharpie. So what I want to do first, before I waste a bunch of effort trying to hand sand out low spots, is I want to identify them and then see if they're bad enough to take back over to the grinder and try to get them flat there. So before I wet anything, I just dry sand this, and I don't bother about putting a back or behind the blade because I'm not putting much pressure at all. So it's showing me some low spots here, which look fairly deep, and a couple here, and maybe this one right here at the tip. And those are showing just as little shadows. I don't know if you can see them in the camera, but here's a low spot, and that's pretty typical. About the width of your platen forward of where you stop, you're usually going to get a low spot there. So then you can float over that on your platen and get that out of the way and just bring the whole surface of the knife down. And we're not talking about much. I mean, I can't even feel that, but I can see it. And when somebody sights down their knife in some light, you know, that will show as a shadow. So we get rid of those, but I think I can get that out over on the platen. So then I'm going to move over to this side of the knife, and we'll do the same thing. These big Magnum Sharpies are the handiest things in the shop. So we'll give that just a second to dry. Pretty warm day. Alright, well, we'll do the same thing. Alright, now here, you'll notice that all of this area is high, and I didn't really try to get into that corner so much, but I feel like that's going to be okay. But we pretty much have high spot all through here, and then all of this is slightly lower. So all we're going to do is go back over to the grinder, and we're going to lightly just float over this area until we bring this high spot down and start making this go away. And when we're done with that, and we do that at 320 at a low belt speed, always guarding against a buildup of heat like we always do. But when we start doing that and start getting this cleaned up, not trying to push anything in that direction, but just bringing this surface down until this surface trues, then we're ready for some real hand sanding. I'm going to do the same thing with Craig Chef's knife before I take this one back over to the grinder, and do them both at the same time. But this is like the final grinding step, other than doing these flats. Now when I get this cleaned up to where it's flat, then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this area where the guard's going to sit and the area forward of the guard, that's going up to final polish. And then I'll start working these up. Just do that now because that will affect this area of the knife right in here. It'll make that flat right there spread a little bit that you bring back with the 320 belt. You just kind of walk it back and forth. And then it's just hand sanding. And it won't take very long. But this is where your knife blades really start to get that that professional look, if for lack of a better term. So I'm going to get what I've got uploaded to YouTube, and when we come back we'll be well into the hand sanding, and we're going to be getting these things fit up for handles.